October 9th, 2018. Coming up on Roland Unfiltered, live from Los Angeles. The last day of voter registration in Florida is being disrupted by Hurricane Michael, plus a state website that's not working. We'll have a live report on the storm from the Weather Channel's Paul Goodlow. Also, folks, what is happening also there, lawyers, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, they're actually planning on taking the state of Florida to court if they don't deal with their voting system. A new report on climate change says it will cause extreme drought, wildfires, floods, and food shortages for hundreds of millions of people in just 11 years. Folks, that is in our lifetime. But people of color will bear a great deal of the burden. We'll break it down with a climate expert. Also, the GOP midterm strategy is to scare their people that angry mobs of paid protesters are coming after them. Same thing segregationists said about the civil rights movement. Using race and gender to divide America, will it work? Our panel will deal with Kanye going to the White House, the same White House that is sabotaging the Affordable Care Act by doing maintenance of the Obamacare website during the enrollment period. What the hell is wrong with these people? Cruelty is certainly a feature of the Trump administration. A new study shows most people think their racial identity is not tied to their skin color. The author is here to explain. Folks, it's time to bring the funk. Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
Folks, a number of states is the deadline to register to vote, including the state of Florida. And there are all kinds of problems in the Sunshine State that are keeping people from registering to vote. First, there's a major hurricane bearing down on the Florida Panhandle. We'll talk about that hurricane, which is now Hurricane 3, in just a moment with Paul Goodlow of the Weather Channel. But first, the Florida online registration site crashed over the weekend. Thousands of people who thought they registered may not have, and there's no notice to them that they failed. Now, also, the Miami Herald is reporting a number of people said it was very difficult for them to even get into the site, for them to they were kicking their names out. Now, look, people are still trying to register today. Today is the last day to register. The state says the site is up. There are no problems. Yet folks are still reporting problems. All the issue, of course, with the hurricane, what Florida governor has said, they're going to extend the registration 1 day for people who are affected in the areas. But the problem is the Florida Democratic Party, they want the deadline extended by a week. Joining us right now is Samuel Sinyangwe, a policy analyst for OurStates.org, and Marsha Johnson-Bianco, co-director of the Voting Rights Project for the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights Under Law. First and foremost, Samuel, when you look at what's happening in Florida, we had this happen a couple of years ago where a judge there extended the registration 6 days, even though Governor Rick Scott and others did not want to do so, because the judges said that, look, people should have the right to participate in the democracy and not be impacted by an impending hurricane. Now you have a hurricane plus a website that has problems.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, the hurricane is bad enough, but now what we found out over the past day is that the state's voter registration site is broken at the time that everybody is trying to register to vote. And so, you know, we personally, organizationally, we have actually sent 13,000 young people who were not registered to vote to the state's online voter registration site over the past 4 or 5 days, 13,000 young people. And the site has been down for at least the past day. We have reports that it was not working as far back as Saturday. So we're talking about thousands of people predominantly young people and people of color who tried to register on a website that is now broken, and the state is not even has said that it's fixed, but we're still seeing reports that it's continued to be broken. So as far as we know, the site is still not working, still not allowing people to register to vote. And again, as you said, this is the deadline.
Marcia, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law has made it clear that they will take the state of Florida to court if necessary. What are you hearing from Florida state officials? I was reading a couple of newspapers, and they said everything is fine. There are no issues.
Right. We're hearing from the officials that there's nothing wrong with the website. The voters just need to enable cookies, and they should be able to register to vote. But we're getting calls to the 866-OUR-VOTE hotline that the voters can't register. And so we're asking the state to extend the voter registration by at least 4 days so that voters can focus on evacuating because of the hurricane and still have the opportunity to vote. It should be noted that the governor's extension only relates to paper ballots. Paper registration forms, not online voter registration. So they're not even addressing the problems related to online voter registration, and the extension for paper ballots by 1 day is just not enough when folks are focused on evacuating for the hurricane.
And obviously, the website was put up to make it easier for people to update their information so they would not be bumped off. It has been operational a year as of October 1st. And so, what other recourse is there? Are you operating at the behest, frankly, of the Secretary of State and the governor? And so, again, the Florida Democratic Party, they want it extended a week. But again, they're focusing on the hurricane. What you're focusing on, Marcia, has to do with the website itself.
Yeah, and I think they're both related because of the hurricane. Folks are not able to focus on registering. This is the deadline to register if the website isn't working, if the state isn't providing the adequate opportunities to be able to vote and providing an extension, then that's the problem. You can't have a resource that is supposed to be convenient for voters but not support it in times when voters on the deadline are trying to register to vote.
Samuel?
Yeah, we've been focusing more on the website, and that's because this isn't the first time the website has had these types of issues. It had a similar issue during the registration deadline to participate in the primary. And we know people who tried to register, were not able to register online, and did not get the opportunity to vote in the primary because of it. Now we're at the deadline to register for the general, and we're seeing the same exact error happening after they said they fixed it in July. We're seeing the same exact error happening in the state saying that they fixed it again, like they did back in July. And again, the site is not fixed. So that's where we've been focusing. We know, particularly for young people, first-time registrants, that the online registration system is often, the easiest and sort of the go-to place for them to go register. And as I said, there have been at least 13,000 people have tried that over the past 4 days, young people, and have encountered a website that is so dysfunctional. I wouldn't be surprised if folks don't want to ever go back to that website again. And that's exactly how the voter suppression happens and how people get dissuaded not only from registering this time, but from registering in the future.
Last question for you, Marcia. Obviously, first of all, have you already gone to federal court, or is that what the plan is?
No, we are preparing to use litigation if the state does not do what it's supposed to do. We've written a letter to the state asking them to extend the voter registration, but we're always ready to go to court if they're not prepared to do the right thing.
All right, Samuel Sinyangwe, Marcia Johnson Blanco, we certainly appreciate you joining us on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, again, the issues there beyond the voting machine, you're also dealing with a hurricane that is coming the way, complicating all sorts of problems there in Florida. Hurricane Michael has already been called a Category 3. Thousands of people are under evacuation orders as we speak. It is bearing down on Florida's panhandle. Hurricane Michael, again, has strengthened. First of all, it has been upgraded. Winds up to 110 miles an hour, while coastal areas are facing life-threatening storm surges. 12 forecasters are warning the storm is likely to intensify beyond where it is right now with a lot higher winds. Here to break it all down is Paul Goodlow, meteorologist for the Weather Channel. Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Roland. How are you doing this afternoon?
So here we go again. We're dealing with Hurricane Michael. We're dealing with what's happening, in Florida. We of course dealt with the hurricane that hit Puerto Rico, that hit the Virgin Islands. Now we're dealing with last year. Now we're dealing, of course, earlier this year, North Carolina. Now Florida is in the way. There's also concerns, potential damage to early voting locations, but also voting locations with election just 4 weeks away.
Well, hearing that they're going to extend the voting, that's good news because the state of Florida needs to send all the resources they can to deal with this. This is an emergency across the state. The state of emergency has been declared. So, again, this is a major hurricane, not something to be kind of sneeze at. And those that can afford to need to get out of harm's way. And a big issue with evacuations, and people get on people for not evacuating, but it costs money to evacuate, to pay for a hotel for 3 or 4 or 5 days, to have gas, to have fuel, to have food for maybe a family of 4. We're talking probably, $60 to $100 a meal for 3 meals a day. So it's expensive to evacuate, but people do need to evacuate. You need to weigh, okay, I put myself in debt versus I put myself in harm's way. We can always make more money. We can't make more people and make more memories that we have here. So the important thing is your evacuation zone to get out. You mentioned storm surge, 9 to 12 feet, and that is definitely possible. The Florida coastline, that part of the panhandle, is very surge prone. There's a very shallow coastal shelf, which means you have a big, strong hurricane like Michael is. It creates its own kind of lifting of the ocean, and then you have waves on top of that, and then you have the winds coming in as well, pushing that wall of water even higher on shore. So the storm surge is a real threat across that region. And parts of the Florida Panhandle have beautiful beaches. And a lot of people flock there to vacation to live. So they're definitely in the evacuation zones. They need to head inland to higher ground. And we're talking that stretch. There are probably a couple of 100,000 people who live within 10 feet of sea level. So the risk is real there, and the winds as well. Unlike Florence came in very slowly. So Florence had time to entrain some drier air to kind of wind down. And at one point, Florence was a 4, made landfall as a Category 2. Michael is a Category 3, possibly maybe even Category 4 over the next within the next 24 hours when it makes landfall. It's moving quickly north at 12 miles per hour, so it is going to slam in there. So whatever winds you'll have, you can even add that 12 mile per hour forward speed to the winds. So we can definitely have catastrophic damage in some areas. The good news is, unlike Florence or a la Harvey last year, this thing comes in and keeps going. It's not going to stall out. We're not going to have days upon days of rain. But the swath, if you can put that up again, it's going to continue to move northward into Florida, into Georgia, and then into areas that were hit hard with Hurricane Florence, the low country of South Carolina, eastern North Carolina. They can bring that area a couple of more inches of rain, maybe in that 3 to 6 inch variety. Despite the fact that it's moving fast, it still is loaded with moisture and rain, and it could be wrung out there. So we have insult to injury. Many rivers are still running high across that area of eastern North Carolina and eastern and South Carolina as well. So a huge flood concern is up there inland, that's well away from the coastline from where Michael will make landfall. So we're talking now's the time to hopefully you are in, if you're in that zone, that you have left, or you have a sturdy structure to ride this thing out. And definitely there's going to be a swath of some damage and some power outages to last maybe a week or so. But the good news is, unlike Puerto Rico, we can quickly get resources in there through the arterial roads around the area. But to hear that people are coming up with a voter deadline, I always encourage everyone to vote. But at this point, they need to put these resources into protect people's lives and then push the deadline back and then get back to normal. Hopefully in a week to 5 days, things will be back to somewhat normal in that area directly impacted by Hurricane Michael.
We can pull that slide back up, Paul, as I look at it right here on my iPad. What is the impact? We're focusing on the Florida panhandle, but what about those folks who are there in Alabama? Because obviously what that red line is, that whole Gulf Coast region right there, certainly those folks are also going to be impacted.
Definitely. Parts of what they call lower Alabama, the Dothan area, it's well to the south and east of Montgomery. Montgomery will get their fair share of cloud cover, some rain showers, and maybe some gusty, strong winds, but nothing unlike perhaps a stormy thunderstorm afternoon across that part of kind of central and south central Alabama. But lower Alabama also will see some pretty intense impacts. Now, the hurricane still remains rather small. So we're talking about a lot of the impacts have always been on the east side and the northeast side of the system. So areas of Tallahassee, maybe even towards Gainesville, might have more impact than, say, in Montgomery, Alabama will be, even though they might be technically closer to the center. But if you look at this map and look at the right side, at the right front quadrant, things rotate counterclockwise. That's when you have more of the winds coming directly off the ocean. You're going to have a greater tornado threat pretty close to that center, especially on the east side where it makes landfall as well. So Gainesville, even maybe to Jacksonville, there are probably greater threats there, including tornadoes, than, say, Montgomery and Birmingham. So that's good news for them, but not as great news for areas along northern Florida and east area Panhandle. Then into parts of southern Georgia. Atlanta, they'll have some impacts. They'll have some gusty winds. Can't rule out some down power lines. But a lot of people don't realize the geography and topography of this area of the U.S. There are a lot of pine trees, and pine is not the strongest wood out there by far. So we're going to have a lot of these pine trees coming down, bringing power lines down, threatening to cover roads, threatening to hit homes as well. So we say to take that swath seriously. We're going to have some pretty intense winds because this thing is going to move quickly. It's not going to have time to wind down and slowly make landfall. It's hitting pretty hard, and it's keep trucking right on through southern Georgia, into middle Georgia, into low country of South Carolina, Columbia. Definitely going to be impacted as well with very strong winds. A lot of trees in this part of the southeast, including Florida, a lot of pine trees, a lot of trees that might be weakened from previous year's drought, but definitely something to keep in mind if you live next to a lot of tall trees.
Obviously, a lot of people are impacted by these hurricanes, and we're hearing lots about climate change as it relates to Hurricane Michael and other storms. Just yesterday, the United Nations panel that monitors climate change issued a new report that brought that, first of all, that ought to scare the hell out of everyone. They're saying not 100 years from now, they're not saying not 50 years from now, but unless we make drastic changes across this globe, by 2030, we can expect to see extreme drought, wildfires, floods, and food shortages for hundreds of millions of people, and likely to be felt most by poor folks and people of color. With us to look at climate change and African Americans, we'll keep Paul on this conversation, but also Jackie Patterson. She is Senior Director of the NAACP's Environmental Climate and Justice Program. Of course, we also have our panel there as well, Teresa Lundy, founder of TML Communications, Malik Abdul, National Communications Director for the Black Conservative Federation, and Pastor Shannon Wright, the third vice chair of the Maryland GOP. When I look at what is going on with climate change, part of the issue here, Jackie, is that you have this battle between folks who say, look, this is no big deal. This is just going to cost us too much money. We're really not seeing changes. The bottom line is when this UN report talks about that 1.5 degrees in terms of how we can impact that if we don't deal with that, we're never going to be able to go to fix this problem. And so your assessment of this UN report.
Yeah, so unfortunately, as you said, it is exactly calling the alarm that we've always known about for a while now. And unfortunately, we have a situation where people aren't necessarily acknowledging the direness of the situation and the fact that we could have prevented being where we are now if we had started a while back. But the UN is saying it's now almost too late to make the changes that we need unless we act aggressively and ambitiously in terms of reducing our emissions that drive climate change.
Paul, certainly as a meteorologist, it must drive you crazy when you look at policymakers in Washington, D.C., and let's just be perfectly honest, the Republican Party, who denies climate change, who say it's not real. When you look at what Donald Trump is doing to the Environmental Protection Agency, they are rolling back many of the initiatives that President Barack Obama put in place. Trump has pulled us out of the Paris Accord as And so it is as if these folks are not paying attention to these rapid storms that are back to back, where we used to get one, maybe two. When you look up and you see 4 and 5 and 6, and it is like surely has to be driving you crazy to listen to how they are dismissing this as no big deal.
Well, I look at human nature, Roland, and you look at politicians, they're all on, 2, 4, or 6-year terms. So, climate change doesn't really happen within those terms. Maybe multiple terms, yes, but within one term, not really. So they're worried about getting reelected. So that's all politics. But in terms of the federal government, if you look at what the military is doing, now, despite what the politicians say, the military is making changes now to deal with a changing climate, a rising sea level. So, not everyone in the federal government is ignoring the reality of our changing climate, our warming globe, our rising sea levels, and our stronger and more devastating storms. So the military is doing something about it. So it's not everyone in the federal government. It's just the politicians. Many of them decide that, well, if I do this, it might cost my constituents tax money and their taxes go up. So then they don't like me. They vote me out. So that's their personal decision for whatever bias, whatever skin they have in the game. But people who live this every day, they realize it's happening. They're making change in the military and the Navy, Air Force. And I'm on the front lines. I've seen these storms. I'm seeing these so-called 500-year floods or 1,000-year floods, which doesn't mean it happens once every 500. It means statistically, it's like 0.05. It's a very low percentage of happening in any given year. But we're seeing it. These percentages happen. These low percentages events happen, every 2, 3, or 4 years, a lot faster than you typically would expect because we're having more energy, more in our atmosphere. That's what heat is, and warming up the globe. And also, climate change and global warming doesn't mean that everyone has beach weather all year round. It means people are stuck in certain patterns. Maybe they're stuck in a wet pattern, which is horrible for farmers trying to get their crops out of the ground. And maybe they're stuck in a drought pattern, which is also horrible for farmers. And even water resources could impact the way you water your grass, or how much water you can drink, or how many times you can flush your toilet. So there are so many wide-ranging impacts we don't know yet. You have options of either what a lot of people are doing is say, hey, we should change our habits and maybe change the outcome, or the other option is ignore it, and then we have to deal with the wilder extremes, what I deal with day to day, which is the weather.
Malik and Shannon, this is what I'm not understanding. You hear Paul make the point when I hear conservatives say, okay, well, this is going to cost business, it's going to cost jobs, it's going to cost us tax dollars. But the reality is, when these storms hit, it's costing us billions of dollars. And so it's not as if we're not spending this money. And again, there's only one Earth. And so as Black conservatives, what do you say to your party? Act as if this is no big deal and we should just keep doing what we're doing. Don't make any efforts, any environmental protections. Let's just let Donald Trump run rampant through the EPA, pull out of the Paris Accord, let coal people do whatever they want to do, and then everything will just be somehow perfect and normal.
Well, if you think about what the administration is doing, of course, there's Trump, and then, of course, there's also what the government is doing with a lot of the career employees. So the Department of Energy is putting forth about $30 million into cost-shared research and development. The agency that does, I think it was SATO, I think that's the name of the department within energy, they're doing a lot with solar technology. They're doing a lot with fossil fuel technology, making sure that fossil fuels are actually cleaner and safer. A lot of the things that they're doing beyond the research and development, there's a perception that Donald Trump pretty much is the federal government. So if Donald Trump says something, then that means that the career government employees, people who have worked in government for 20, 25 years, whether it's scientists at NIH, or whether they're management analysts at the Department of Energy or any of the other government agencies, the work of the government goes on irrespective of the president.
Malik,
and so that's a lot of the things that are doing.
Malik, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. All I just heard there is straight bullshit, Malik.
But it's true.
No, Malik. Let's just be real clear. Mm-hmm. The number of scientists who have resigned from the Environmental Protection Agency is significant. Right. We are seeing a massive attack on scientists in agriculture, in EPA, and also in the Department of Energy. When you say $30 million, we have pulled out of the Paris Accord. When you had the Trump administration came into the White House and literally was saying, show me all of the people who are attending these climate conferences. And they have been targeting these individuals. Shannon, I get spin, but let's just be real here. What the Trump administration is doing, it is stacked with lobbyists from the oil and gas industry. Trump is touting coal, coal, coal. You can say clean coal all day. It doesn't exist. The bottom line is this administration is rolling back in a huge way the environmental protections, and America is not leading the way to address what this climate report is actually saying, Shannon.
I can't really argue with you on that one. You know, years back, you saw what happened in New Orleans with Katrina, and then it was some years, and there was Irene, and then Sandy, and then the last couple of years, every year there's been some named storms that have done some damage. I live in Baltimore because we lost our house in New Jersey from Hurricane Sandy. So I understand what the party says, but I understand how it affects the people in the community. Personally, I drive a hybrid because I'm not a scientist, but I know when I see things changing over time, if it walks like a duck, if it talks like a duck, I don't have to wait for it to quack in my face. So,
Teresa?
Well, I agree. I think what we see right now is the Trump administration is trying to save money. I'm not sure why they're targeting the environmentalists, but I think it's obviously time to stop it because, again, lives are in the trenches, are being hurt daily. And I think, again, we need to find solutions in order to actually transcend this actual problem.
Paul and Jackie, I want to get both of you in here. And so, and look, I understand what Malik was attempting to do, but Jackie, the reality is there is a clear and decisive attack on people who believe that climate change is real. You've got Republicans on Capitol Hill who are in denial about climate change. They control the House, they control the Senate, they control the White House. And so they are not leading on this issue. And in fact, Trump has made no mention of this report. No big deal. It's irrelevant. It's as if it never happened, Jackie.
No, you're absolutely right. We have situations like where there's been protections rolled back on the Alaskan Native villages that are facing impacts where, for example, the Red Dog mine there has violated the Clean Water Act 600 times, and yet it continues to operate and pollute those areas. And those are the same areas where we're having impacts like the Kivalina in Alaska is going to actually evacuate displace their entire populace because of sea level rise driven by climate change. And so the rollback of regulations are impacting Alaska Native villages, African-American communities, of course, we're seeing in the crosshairs disproportionately impacted by each and every one of these disasters from the storms to the flooding to the drought, already living in food insecure communities. And so all of these impacts are being felt now. We talk about future catastrophic climate change. Some communities are in the midst of catastrophe right now.
And Paul, look, this impacts Black people. When you look at what's happening with environmental racism all across the country, we are impacted. At the end of the day, look, the people who are most at a disadvantage will be greatly impacted by climate change. Your final comment on this topic.
Well, you know, figures don't lie, but liars do figures. Now, I'm a scientist. The figures show that, yes, our climate is changing, our Earth is warming, and like the UN report said, we're going to have irreversible impacts if we don't do something and change things now. And think about back in the 60s and 50s, you know, smoking was the norm. And then eventually they put warning labels on the cigarette packet. Why? Because people linked smoking with cancer, smoking with birth defects with pregnant women. You know, what will it take for, you know, the masses to say, you know what, we need to be protected from this. We need to do whatever it takes. Yes, I know there's a big push and a big fight by big tobacco to stop that. But you know, the human interest, the safety of the population won out. So it's a matter of, in my opinion, getting people who have that same mindset. Not all politicians are scientists. Some of them are. But when you have 95% of doctors saying, if you smoke, there's a good chance you'll get cancer, and then just 5% saying, There are people who smoke all their lives who don't get cancer. You know, what are you going to do? Me? I'm going with the numbers. I'm a scientist. I'm not smoking, and also I'm aware that climate is changing, and if I can, I will choose a greener choice than a non-green choice for the future of my children and their children.
All right, then, Paul Goodlow, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot. And, Paul, do me a favor. Next time you come on Roland Unfiltered, take that damn Texas Longhorn photo off that wall. You know how I feel about the Longhorns. You know black and burnt orange don't go together.
If I move my head, there's the national championship score there, 41-38 USC.
That was. You said Florida, what? University of Florida? Okay, whatever.
No, USC.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, that was sort of like what when Bush was president. All right, Paul
2005.
Goodlow.
When was A&M in the national championship?
Yeah. Paul Goodlow.
Let's do some research on that.
Scared to play us. That's why y'all scared to play us. All right, Paul Goodlow, the Weather Channel. We appreciate it. Thanks a bunch, Jackie, with the NAACP. Thank you as well.
Thank you.
All right, folks, the Republican Party, they decided that running on these so-called accomplishments of Donald Trump really ain't going to work. So they've said, we've got a bunch of angry mobs running around trying to take over America, and they're all paid protesters with money coming from George Soros. He is pretty much like the biggest boogeyman for the Republicans. But a lot of this also, frankly, are some anti-Semitic attacks on George Soros, who is, of course, Jewish. Now, what they're saying is very similar to what segregationists said during the Civil Rights Movement when they said these angry mobs of black people are going to come out here agitating for change, and they were getting money from these Jewish folks. Here's what Reverend Dr. William J. Barber tweeted yesterday about Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, his claims of mobs attacking senators. Now, let's pull this up. McConnell's language isn't new. When Judge Frank Johnson ruled against George Wallace in 1965, opening the door for Selma to Montgomery March, Wallace called Johnson a hypocrite who prostitutes our law in favor of mob rule. Now, the GOP, of course, has become the party that is stoking racial and gender divisions, fear brown immigrants, black people, women who dare speak up, coming for your sons and husbands, and LGBTQ folks, all threatening white male patriarchy. Nothing so to go back to our panel here. And so, Malik, I want to start with you. And so when you hear McConnell talk about these angry mobs and paid protesters, I'm sorry, it's as if people who are progressive or who are liberal are not patriots, who simply believe in a just America. That was the Republicans surely were embracing the Tea Party when they were marching on Capitol Hill, when they were storming Affordable Care Act town halls.
Well, I'm glad you actually brought up the Tea Party, because if you remember, of course, they started wearing tea bags, so, around their heads, but then they migrated. And some of the things that the Tea Party did, I didn't necessarily agree with. I didn't agree when they showed up, of course, expressing their Second Amendment rights. I didn't agree when they showed up at Obama campaign events with their rifles. I didn't agree with that then. I equally don't agree.
The Republican Party did.
Well, yeah, sure. Some people in some. Some people in the party did, but I think it's disingenuous to say that everybody in the Republican Party supported everything that the Tea Party did, just like everyone.
No, hold up. First of all, I didn't say that. What I did say is that the Republican National Committee and those individuals who want to be in power had no problem at all with what Tea Party folks were doing, because what they felt is that what they were out there was driving up the poll numbers of people who were against the Affordable Care Act. They were fully embracing of those things. Yes or no?
Absolutely. And it's the same thing that we have now. It's the same thing that we have now going on the Democrat side. When you look at the endorsement.
But was that mob rule with the Tea Party?
Well, we didn't have, I don't recall the Tea Party actually showing up at events where Obama officials were. I don't recall the Tea Party actually going to commencements and booing secretaries of states. I don't recall the Tea Party going into restaurants, accosting people at restaurants. I don't recall them kicking them out of restaurants. These are things that are happening now, and I think it is fair. Of course, it's strategic. Both sides do it.
I do recall the Tea Party folks spitting on a civil rights legend like Congressman John Lewis and others as they were going into the U.S. Capitol. I recall that happening.
Well, yeah. So some members of the Tea Party may have done something like that, but if
okay, I just want to make sure that we're recalling that.
But you bring up John Lewis. I think it's also important to realize that if you're talking about rhetoric, even in that, I think it was when he was running against Obama, it was John Lewis who actually referred to who made the comment that. Who was that? McCain would actually take us back to the days of George Wallace standing in the schoolhouse door. Mitt Romney was a sexist. Everyone disliked Mitt Romney. You know, he was the binder full of women. And these are attacks that Democrats actually ledge on Republicans during that time.
What's
so
Teresa?
I think it's something that happens all the time.
Malik, I get your point. But Teresa, here's the reality. The reality is if Republicans are supporting voter suppression efforts, that are denying black folks the right to vote, that are putting in place rules and procedures that do take us back to George Wallace, yeah, it's a fair comparison. When you have the Supreme Court, a conservative Supreme Court, Teresa, that guts the Voting Rights Act and then says that Congress needs to update it, and the Republican Party is in control and refuses to even have hearings, even consider it. In fact, you have Sensenbrenner from Wisconsin. Republicans don't even want to sign on to his bill to fix the Voting Rights Act. So that sounds about right, Teresa.
Absolutely, it sounds about right. I think Democrats are in their right to act the way they are. This is modern age. You know, Tea Party, it was back in the day. Modern age, yes, there are going to be some new creative methods that are going to take place in order for people to voice their opinions and create the charge that's necessary for their voice to be heard. I think right now what we're seeing, yes, you know, we have our legislators actually now, for me, in a millennial sense, taking a stand, and they're telling people, look, when you see them, approach them, because it seems like the message is not getting through. When we knock on their doors or when we call their elected office from the Senate to the Congress, who's unavailable? The elected official. So then we get the staffer or the intern, and then, you know, you expect people to be in a solemn state. I don't think a solemn state is where we are. This is the state that not only the Democratic Party, because as we have seen in many rallies across the state with the Trump administration and so on, people are out of control on both sides. So again, it needs to be a balance of professionalism, but again, we're in different times.
But you know what, Shannon, here's the issue for me. We actually saw earlier this year where Republican members of Congress were scared to even hold town hall hearings. You saw people who were just, okay, I don't want to get attacked or have to answer any questions. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. You are elected to office by the people. The least you can do is actually hold a town hall of your constituents and have to answer their questions. And so people are complaining about folks who were, knocking on the Supreme Court door. Okay, you know what? Seriously, I don't think that was any big deal. Now, I'm not chasing somebody out of a damn restaurant, because that's just a waste of my time. That to me is utterly ridiculous. Now, if you choose not to serve somebody, okay, and then you're gonna suffer the consequences of losing business. But the reality here is Mitch McConnell acts like he doesn't want any dissent whatsoever. Dissent is the basis for this country. It was founded on dissent.
That's true. I'm old enough to remember bad behavior and acting out on both sides. I don't care what party you belong to. There's a certain way you should be handling yourself and a certain way you should be acting, especially if the younger generation, the millennials and beyond, are looking to their, quote, elders for how you react and how you respond. So when I see the Democrats, in this particular case, acting a certain way and acting out, it's not cool. But by the same token, when I saw the different protests on the Republican side against President Obama, that wasn't cool either. If we want to get to the issues at hand, the things that our country needs to face, let's cut all the bull and the drama. Let's keep it to the issues on both sides.
Speaking of issues, I want y'all to respond to this ad that Republicans are running against a brother, Antonio Delgado, in New York. Check this out.
Who am I? I'm Antonio Delgado. I was raised to believe you're supposed to love your neighbor. I'm an attorney, fighting for what's fair and just.
Gotcha, sweating this like you having sex to a porno flick.
We owe it to our country to restore the American dream.
Criticize is what a patriot does.
God bless our rap, bless our rap, bless our rap, bless our rap. Who am I? I'm Antonio Delgado.
The NRCC is responsible for the content of this ad.
Now, the NRCC is a National Republican Congressional Committee, Malik. Now, they want to portray Antonio Delgado as some dangerous, scary rapper. You notice they left out he's also a Rhodes Scholar. He was a rapper for about as long as I was a professional football player. Didn't happen. I mean, the guy was, if you want to call him a rapper, okay, that's great. So, again, explain this whole deal. Oh, my goodness. Don't elect this rapper, this scary rapper who was rapping about a porno flick. Ooh, don't put him in Congress.
Well, of course. It's politics. That's what happens in politics. I mean, when I saw the ad, I wasn't surprised that Republicans. You approve of the ad? Say that again? You approve of the ad? Well, it's a campaign ad. I don't see anything particularly wrong with the ad. The guy was a rapper, I believe, wasn't he?
Teresa?
Horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Okay, so let's be very clear. Again, one is a Rhodes Scholar, so we need to talk about his credential. As a Rhodes Scholar, one, as an African-American male, two, and lastly, as someone, as a black man who is running as a candidate for his community. Yes, he had a job and a position to, express himself. But I think that political ad was actually geared to the point of, look, this is the person that you're rapping. As soon as he takes this suit off, we're going to see the real him. But, I mean, let's be very clear. He is an educated African-American male. He is running to fight for his community. And, again, this is, unfortunately, Brother Malik has said, this is a political ad. And this is politics today. But again, that is bad politics. That is 2018 bad politics that, again, they couldn't find anything on the educated man. But again, they would find something, as minute as that.
Shannon, we're looking at Antonio Delgado. He is a lawyer, Rhodes Scholar, Harvard Law graduate as well. And again, his rap career, that thing was so short, you can't even call it a career.
It's like this. I've seen, first of all, if he was a rapper, that's his business. That's his business. I've seen folks go from wrestlers
Hold up. By the way,
politics.
Shannon, there's a dude who raps who's going to be at the White House for lunch with Trump and Jared Kushner
there you go.
On Thursday.
So I've heard. So my point is, there's lots of folks that are still rappers that have an opinion and a point and something to say, that folks are trying to get to run for office all the time. So whether he is a rapper or not is not the issue. It should be about, I believe somebody said, the content of character at some point. And again, that's not restricted to any one party. Content of character. When you go around and you do some character assassinations, that's bad politics, and I don't care which party it's from. It's bad politics. These are the folks that are going to be responsible for how much money comes out of your pocket for taxes, the type of health care you have, the type of education that your children have. And if those decisions for who's going to represent you are not based on content of character, you got a problem before Jump Street.
All right, folks, like I said, voter registration deadlines that are coming up. If you are of age, we want to make sure that you are registered to vote. Here are the last days to register in the next 5 days. October 10th, folks in Missouri, that is the last day for you. In New York, North Carolina, and Oklahoma, your date is October 12th. Delaware, you have until October 13th to register. Virginia, October 15th. Kansas, Maryland, New Jersey, Oregon, West Virginia, October 16th. And so, again, we want to make sure that folks are going to be registered, if they're going to get out there. And please, if you are concerned, if you think that, well, I'm not quite so sure whether or not I can do that, please go ahead and re-register just to make sure you're registered to vote. And I want to shift to another topic here, and that deals with the Affordable Care Act. And I really don't get this, Shannon. I don't get this administration, the Trump administration, who continues want to screw with people signing up for the Affordable Care Act. Now, we might remember what happened before where they said they were going to stop advertising, stop pushing it out. Now, the Trump administration plans to have maintenance downtime for healthcare.gov during the period when people actually get to sign up. I'm sorry. I don't care if you are Republican. I don't care if you oppose this. To prevent people from getting the Affordable Care Act, care their lives, is shameful and despicable by this administration.
Again, I can't argue that point. Healthcare should be a basic right, like food, air, water, certain things. So when you say that the website is down for maintenance, when you look at this administration, you have to understand something. Donald Trump's perspective is as a businessman, dollars and cents. The let's cut all the bull. Affordable Care Act costs money. It's not sexy. It's not cute. So if you're really going to do things to try and shift resources and shift funding, you're going to go where you're going to get the best bang for your buck. I'm not saying I agree with them because I don't. But when you have folks that are more interested in politics than people, these are the kind of issues you face. And it's up to the folks that are at the state level and the county level and the local level, regardless of party, to understand when they walk out their doors and see their neighbors, they don't see party, they see people, and act accordingly to the needs of people.
So, Malik, you tell me that the last 10 months, they couldn't figure out to have maintenance on the website. They decided to actually do it when it's time to sign up for the Affordable Care Act?
Well, I don't know about that. I would think that within 10 months they would be able to do that. But, you know, I don't know what the rationale is behind the maintenance during the same time.
Because you know what the rationale is. They want to keep people from signing up for the Affordable Care Act. That's
well, no,
it.
I don't know that. I don't know that
Malik,
at all.
Bruh.
Well, I mean, you can say that, but just because you say it doesn't mean that it's true.
Hold up, Malik. So last year, last year when they decided they were going to stop running ads, why did they do that?
Well, they did it because they had a problem with, were we still in the repeal phase of Affordable Care Act? Are you talking about
hold on. First of all, you ain't repealed nothing.
Well,
Here's
I'm saying,
the other piece.
I know, I'm asking whether or not we were in that repeal phase of Affordable Care. Is that what you're talking about?
They had about 75,000 votes trying to repeal it, so I don't know what the hell phase you're talking about.
Well, they never repealed it. Yeah, they never repealed it.
But here's the other deal, Malik. You also have the Republicans who not only that, wouldn't even send out officials to talk about it. So now all of a sudden you decide to maintenance on the website right when it's time to sign up.
Well, that's good, right? They're doing maintenance on the website.
Hell
that's
no.
good, right?
No, it's not good. It's not.
See, guess what? You're going to be one of those folks with a pre-existing condition or a family member, so they actually get to repeal it, and then it's like, oh, what happened? Oh, my bad. The old law, you could go ahead and be covered, but under the Trump law, you're not going to be able to be covered. Teresa?
No, I think, again, like you said, Roland, you are calling it straight to the surface, right? Putting feet to the fire. And unfortunately, again, as Shannon was talking about, in terms of bringing, people first, that is the mindset of what we should be talking about here. Maintenance during a crucial period in people's lives in order to take care of their families and their own individual health during maintenance season. I think, again, it's another Russian crush, and I'm, for one, actually surprised that I haven't heard any real media coverage about that, because, again, it's not about the people that's being at the forefront of this conversation.
Well, again, they also did the exact same thing last year, and this just shows you, frankly, how trifling they are. And check this out. What's so crazy is that the downtime. So you're talking about more than 20+ hours again, but you waited until it's sign-up time to check the website. Yeah, we know that's filed. All right, speaking of filed, Ted Cruz, every other full letter word was taken, so all we got left is filed. So, of course, he is running against Beto O'Rourke for the U.S. Senate position. He's trying to keep his job. There's a political action committee that put out a pretty damn hilarious ad. I can't wait to hear my panel has to say about this. Rotate.
Somebody left something on my door the other day. It said, Ted Cruz, toughest Texas. I mean, come on. If somebody called my wife a dog and said my daddy was in on the Kennedy assassination, I wouldn't be kissing their ass. You stick a finger in their chest and give them a few choice words. Or you drag their ass out by the woodshed and kick their ass, Ted. Come on, Ted.
Political ad paid for by FTC PAC, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
All right, I got to ask my panel. I'm sorry. I get politics. I get you want to sit here and embrace Donald Trump, but I'm with that ad. You talk about my wife, call her a dog. You talk about her looks and accuse my daddy of killing President Kennedy. Ain't no way in hell I'm going to roll with you anywhere.
Self-preservation, why would you? I mean, I get it. Again, politics. Whoever put that together was trying to make a point.
Okay, okay, hold on, Shannon. Shannon, you married, right?
I sure am.
Okay, so let's say your husband was a politician, and another guy called you a dog, and talked about how you looked, and said your father-in-law killed the president. And then your husband come home and say, but baby, I got to go ahead and, I got to roll with him. I got to campaign for him. He get the side eye? You cut him off?
So I've been accused at times of being an angry black woman who's been married for almost 20 years. So first, I'm not going to do it out. And then I'm going to check my husband if he didn't check her before he came home. So, but that's me personally.
That's what I'm saying. You gonna check your husband like, lost your damn mind if you think he gonna roll here.
Pretty much.
Okay, Malik, you married?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Okay, Malik. Let's say you married. You a politician. Another cat call your wife ugly. Talk about her looks. Say she looked like a dog. Say your daddy killed Kennedy. You cool rolling with him?
Well, oh, come on, Roland. Now, of course, we're talking about the President of the United States. So it's not like
I'm talking about, no, hell no.
Yeah, but we are, though.
I mean,
we're talking about, but Ted Cruz talking about Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. Of course, they had that spat during the campaign, but Ted Cruz, like everybody else, pretty much came around because Donald Trump is the President of the United States.
Malik, spat.
I'm serious.
Malik. If a man call your wife ugly,
I would have a problem with it. I would have a problem with it.
You gonna say, honey, that's a spat?
Nope, I would have a problem with it. I would absolutely have a problem with it. 100%.
So what I'm saying is, you would be rolling with him, trying to suck up to him if he talked about your wife like that, huh?
Well, I don't know. Look at the things that were said about Obama, by the Clintons and others during that 2008 election. Obama came back around like everyone else did.
Any of the Clintons call Michelle Obama a dog?
That wasn't happening.
No, they didn't call Michelle. They didn't call Michelle Obama a dog. No, they didn't call Michelle Obama a dog.
Malik, did any of the Clintons talk about Michelle Obama's looks?
No, they didn't.
Malik, did any of the Clintons say that Obama's daddy was involved in the assassination of a U.S. president?
No, it was just Bill Clinton, remember, said that a few years back, Obama would be serving coffee. You remember when he said that? And when he also said,
Teresa, go ahead.
Well, it's true.
No.
But it's true.
So this is another example, and I'm glad this is another example that I'm glad that commercial actually pulled out, that Senator Ted Cruz has no backbone. He hasn't had a backbone when he was running for office. The people, his constituents, saw that he had no backbone. I mean, he again was for me a sitting duck senator, in accordance to some of his policies, but really when he decided to run on the national front, everybody got to saw the true Ted Cruz. And he had those two grand opportunities to stand up for the one person who's been in his corner, and he decided to not. And so for me, I think
he stood by his wife. He stood by his wife.
Okay, he stood by his wife.
Wait, what? You right, Malik.
But
he stood by his.
I've never heard of any problems.
Hold up, Malik. You right. He stood by his wife.
Great.
He didn't stand up for his wife.
There you go.
Stand up. It's semantics. Stand up. Stand by. We're talking about the same thing. He didn't stop supporting his wife. He criticized the president when he said it. He was very visceral in his criticism.
How long did it take him to criticize his wife? I mean,
so is either he didn't criticize.
Let me help you out. Malik,
Yes.
let me help you out. We standing here. My wife right next to me. Somebody walk up and slap my wife. I
My
go,
Lord.
baby, you okay? Did that hurt?
And then
That's
you
standing
going after them, right?
Now, hold up, Malik, hold on. That's called standing next to your wife.
Right.
Somebody walk up to your wife and slap him. Then you beat the hell out of them. That's called standing up for your wife.
Right.
It ain't semantics. Teresa, go ahead and finish your point.
No, I think, look, right on, Roland. But overall, again, you know, what the state of Texas need, they need a senator who has their best interests. It's consistently, you know, with Ted Cruz, he's dropping the ball. He's not taking part in the necessary legislation for his state. And it's evident, you know, it looks like he is one of those get along to be along type of guys. And the people are tired of it. I think, you know, again, showing a older white male, probably in his 60s or 70s, was the right approach, because that is his constituent base that is like, look, we're tired of you sitting in the seat and not doing any work for us. We're tired of you, again, your wife is pushing you around on camera, and we're tired of you not even standing up for her. So again, you know, for me,
not true.
I mean, it was evident even on the campaign trail, even to today.
That's not true.
Definitely factual. But
It's not true, because he criticized Donald Trump. Everybody knows that he criticized Donald Trump for how he responded to his wife.
And how long did it take him to criticize?
Okay. Well, he's a politician.
He's
a politician. We cannot want him to be a politician, but he's a politician.
He's the wrong politician for the job.
Look at the politicians from 2007 to 2008 who all supported Hillary Clinton. Come on now.
Malik,
Yes.
when a grown man talk about your wife
I
and
would
you
have a
keep
problem
rolling
with
with
it.
him,
I absolutely
you
would
a
have a
winner.
problem with it,
You a
and I would
winner.
address it.
All right.
Head
When
on.
will you address
All right,
it?
I would address it.
Let's go to our
just
next
as Ted
topic.
Cruz did.
Go to our next topic.
Head on, right
Conversations about race. I got it. Y'all can keep on going with that. Conversations about race in the age of Trump have become more frequent, and of course, and more contentious. But race, according to a recent study, is about more than skin color. It's not just a black and white issue. Does biology determine your racial identity or your race? Here to discuss that is the author of this study, Alvin Tillery, director of the Center for the Study of Diversity and Democracy at Northwestern University in Chicago. Alvin, so explain when you say that it could be about biology. What does that even mean?
Well, Roland, thanks for having me on. You know, most Americans walk around with a sense of their racial identity that's rooted in biology and genetics. We have this in our common parlance. You know, black people cannot do well in math because of a sort of genetic thing. I'm sure you remember the fast twitch muscle explains why blacks are better at track, or white men can't jump. So we live with this sort of biological conception of race in our society. And so what we wanted to do in our study is to see how much these old ideas, because, you know, frankly, the idea that race is determined by biology is what launched the slave trade. Europeans felt that if they brought people with dark skin to the United States to work in their fields, they would be more successful as slavers, because they thought that blacks could work and toil in the sun better than whites. And so what we wanted to know is how much are these old ideas present in our society in a time when you have President Trump fanning race relations like no modern president we've ever seen. And so that's what the goal of the study was.
And how prevalent are these ideas?
They're less prevalent than we thought. I mean, frankly, when I started to partner with Joanna Mountain, who's the chief science officer at 23andMe that sort of co-sponsored the study, we believe that about 2/3 of Americans would have really a strong commitment to the idea that your genetics or biology determines your race. But we actually found the opposite. Only about 1/3 of Americans overall are committed to the idea that your race is determined exclusively by your genetics. And, you know, that's across racial categories. Whites are more strongly committed to the idea. About 4 in 10 whites believe this, and about 3 in 10 Asian, Latino, and African Americans believe this. And so that's good news. It's one of the few sort of, you know, good news pieces of data that we've had about race relations and survey research for a very long time. And so we're very excited about the finding.
And so what do we then do with it? And so what is the path forward? What does it look like?
Well, understanding that race is not scientifically sort of determined concept, understanding that our skin color differences are not species differences, right? Our skin color difference is about 1 to 3% of our genome. We're about 99% the same. And so understanding that gives you a lot of power to undo the work of racists. It means that all of the divisions that we see in our society are sort of socially constructed. They're constructed through politics. They're constructed through our markets, through capitalism. And that means that we can fix them if we turn our attention to them and we sort of try to fix them as a society. And so it's just one less area where we have to do heavy lifting, to convince people that we are, more alike than we are different, and we should have a just society where everyone is equal. And so, we have to think about it from the perspective of numbers. So what does it mean to say 1/3 of Americans? So that's about 80 million people do believe that it's strongly connected to biology. And so the scientists on our research team are very upset about this. They think the number should be down 1 to 2%. And so, that's what we need to work toward as a society.
All right, Alvin Tillery, we appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland.
All right, folks, time for hashtag HBCU Giving Day. Our university today, roll the tape. University, located, of course, in Prince George's County, Maryland. Founded in 1865, Bowie State is the oldest historically black college university in Maryland and one of the 10 oldest in the nation. If you want to support them, go to bowiestate.edu. That is bowiestate.edu. All right, folks, we certainly appreciate all of you for watching Roland Martin Unfiltered today. I want to thank our panel as well, Teresa, Malik, as well as Shannon. Don't forget you can support us by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com and joining our Bring the Funk fan club. We certainly hope you will be a contributor to make this possible. Of course, we plan on taking the show all across the country, bringing you the news and information that, frankly, you're not going to get anywhere else. There's lots of people out there, of course, who are yakking away on YouTube and on Facebook. Are they actually covering our issues? Or are they actually interviewing the critical newsmakers who you need to hear from? Information you're not going to get on other outlets? The answer is no. It's just us. And so we certainly want you to be a part of this. All right, folks, I am, first of all, just real quick, I'm out here in Los Angeles doing interviews for the BeWoke.vote campaign. Some amazing interviews with people like comedian Ali Sadiq, Erica Ash, Erica Alexander. Tomorrow I'll be talking to Chuck D, Maxine Waters, and also Reverend James Lawson, who led the Nashville movement, plus Zalaha Nails. We got some great interviews. I can't wait for you to see and hear what they have to say about the importance of voting. Do not forget those voter registration deadlines. Please, if you know folks in those places, you got family members, give them a call, email them, text them, tell them they must get registered because we must participate in democracy and make our vote count. Y'all take care. Have a great day.